So I'm currently at the NMBU Biotech building where the event will be taking place. I'll see you soon.
Living life, every day, late at night, not okay. All I want, and I pray, all I need are some better days.
Power will be a significant factor. And then we know that there are X number of social factors: elite status, ethnic status, minority, gender. Are you maybe affected by disabilities? All those factors will come into play in determining who are actually able to afford the fees. I agree with Kurt that probably it's very few, so it'll be a massive exclusion on all of these, but it means that also on gender, I think it's likely to be more exclusive of I would expect in most countries, although it would vary with country and situation. The excluding effect is stronger for women, young women, I would expect. It could be something that could be interesting to study, in that we have had the rounds of applications, approval who are qualified, and then the communication about the fee to then see who withdrew. It would be possible for NMBU to make a small study of that, to see if there was a gender balance in the withdrawal based on payments.
Definitely. Moving on, how do you think this will affect the study environment here at NMBU? What will change, and what do you think will be lost? Sure. Go right ahead.
Well, of course, first of all, the most obvious thing is that there's just going to be less students enrolling in the different programs. And because of that, there's going to be a loss of diversity in the student body. I think primarily the very international programs are going to be affected. A lot of those are at Lanzam and Realtek, specifically in Norway. And I think the change is going to be very, very, very visible. And then, of course, we get into the changes or the loss that's going to be noticed with the learning opportunities, with the sharing of experiences, with exchanging perspectives. I mean, we have an international bachelor, international master programs without international students. And as Paul said, the majority of those students are, from the global south. And I think for me, more than anything, of course, the study program has enriched my knowledge so much, and I've learned so much from my professors, but I've learned so much more from discussions with my fellow students. Yeah. And also to go back a little bit into the gender aspect of that, specifically in our programs, I think the majority of students are female students as well, so it's going to be felt on that level as well. So yeah, it's just, I think it's kind of just, it's going to be a domino effect. It's going to be just one thing after another, and it's going to be interesting to see how next year is going to look like for us. And for the courses, even just for the third years. I think other things that will be affected is what we're already experiencing at Norway is the budget has been cut down, so that's affected the courses and how many courses we can have. And I think with a lack of international students, there's going to be a lack of demand for English-speaking courses. And that can then remove some of the programs, and with that, even less international students or just students coming to the bachelor and master program. So it's going to be a very strong effect and a big loss for everyone.
And I loved your point saying that it's not even just a loss for the university, it's a loss for you as a student to have these other international students in your class.
Exactly.
And they provide enrichment for your education, you would say.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an impact, both academically and socially. Mm-hmm. Definitely in the classroom environment, all the different perspectives that are provided in a more international environment definitely helps students kind of be more nuanced in their thinking. And also socially, in terms of, if you see what IUCU and ESN has done over the last years. The International Food Festival, kind of bringing the community together and kind of showcasing how international awesome NMBU is. I think it's definitely something that will be reduced, and then we'll have to see, if that reduction can kind of, in some way, keep it going as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the immediate effect that the pedagogical academic quality of the program is reduced, because it's just essential to have the global diversity of perspectives and knowledge, positions, experiences in the classroom. And as you say, we teachers cannot replace that. So that's the first thing. Secondly, there will be, as is also economic other problems developing in the programs. And the minister has said, that the programs who face any problem due to this, then the universities should just change their priorities. Okay, and the meaning of that is, that you shift away from international-oriented education, because it's of course devastating for global development studies to not have a global classroom. It's our big value. It's something that's appreciated by our partners, by visitors, when they can teach and come into such a classroom. Secondly, it will reduce everybody's ability to understand and learn and work with global challenges. This is to the detriment of all students from anywhere and for Norway as a country. Thirdly, or is it fourthly now, I'm forgetting how many bad effects I'm seeing, but we will start seeing, and I'm already seeing it, staff and departments starting to think, commercially. We're supposed to think, okay, what can we do to attract fee-paying students? We should probably change our programs, think of different countries, different kinds of, so that is another sort of longer term negative effect to my perspective, a sort of neoliberalization, marketization.
The marketization
development.
part, I had never crossed my mind, but it makes so much sense. So, yeah.
And we already saw it, we discussed it recently in a program committee meeting about, marketing of the university, and the students tell us the marketing was very Europe focused. It's partly because of the application deadline now, 15th of April, but anyway, that kind of effects will easily start to happen. Okay, where is our attention? Where can we get students? And so on. So I think there are many negative effects.
Yeah. I asked this question to one of my friends so that I can answer from their perspective, because I am from Global South, so it doesn't make sense to me. But I asked them and they told me, when we talk about Global South, it's not one country in Global South, right? It's multiple different countries from different continents. African countries are completely different from the countries in Middle East, from the countries in South Asia, Southeast Asia. Every country is indifferent and rich in its own uniqueness. And when I joined university during Corona, it was completely online. Still, the bond that we all created to know each other, to support each other during those COVID times, from Netherlands to Nepal, from Nepal to Zimbabwe, it was so close. And they were really liking it. We were able, in one of our courses in research methods, Elizabeth told us that it was one of the first time in the whole course period that we have been successful to do real research, first field research based qualitative study term paper in the course. So it was only possible because though it was happening online, we were in different countries, so we were trying to help each other to learn from each other, and that grew in these 2-3 years. And everybody know about so many different things. Like when we learn about Green Revolution in India, if we only learn from academical text or from the PowerPoint, it won't make sense. But if I tell a story how that has impacted my whole families and the generations before, that story touches the ones who listen to and the ones who even was teaching the course program. So it was like those things will be missed in the coming classes. And recently we also hosted International Food Festival, where there were around 15 countries except for Europe. So 17 different countries preparing different foods and representing their culture in the global south. So from next year, there won't be anything like this. The numbers will be decreasing slowly. So what is gonna happen? At least here. So it's gonna be different.
Yeah, I mean, there's just nothing good about this, and it does affect, in addition to all of the important social things, it affects the quality of education along the lines that several people have touched in on, and also for Norwegian students then who lack that opportunity. And these arguments are it's not hard to formulate them. It's surprising that we have to formulate them, but okay, that's where we're at. So, however, as an institution, at some point, we have to concede and ask ourselves what are alternative strategies that might be available to at least somewhat compensate for, what alternative strategies are available to try to keep an international atmosphere on this campus. Today about 10% of our students are from other countries. How can we maintain that? How can we improve that? And there might be various ways that we could talk about this evening that will make that somewhat possible.
Yeah, and you made a perfect transition because I wanted to ask you especially, what are some of those,
Right.
those plans, if there are any?
Right. Well, so as I answer that question, the context for doing that is, what are the rules that have come and where are the openings in the rules? And there are various openings. So there's one opening for refugees. So just 2 or 3 days ago, I was at a meeting about how Norwegian institutions might and more strongly engage in the plight of women from Afghanistan. How could we possibly be part of bringing more women from Afghanistan to Norway? And it's super hard. It's super hard, but it's not because of tuition that it's hard. It's because of all sorts of other things that it's hard. We could also maybe, as I said in my introduction, I was at Oslo before I came to NMBU, and there is a pretty striking superficial difference between the number of Norwegian students with minority backgrounds at Oslo, which is super high, compared to NMBU, which is relatively low. So, it's not the same thing, but maybe we need to be working harder to recruit Norwegian and European-based students with minority backgrounds to consider studying here, to at least keep some diversity. Indeed, Norway has its own ethnic minorities. How hard are we working to recruit from those populations? Another kind of loophole, or not a loophole, but another opening in the rules is related to exchange students, and that's different than being able to come for a 2 or 3 year program. That's usually about coming for a semester or a year. But nonetheless, maybe there are ways where we can more assertively establish good exchange programs and be able to recruit students also from the global south who are admitted at their home institution, but then can spend at least a semester, if not a year, with us. So I think that, and yet another point would be and will be to pursue scholarship establishment. So one of the first thoughts that I had when I heard about this is, okay, we'll just say that it costs 80,000 kroner to come here, and if you get admitted, you get a stipend of 80,000 kroner. And then the government rushed out to say, oh, and by the way, you can't use public funds to give stipends. So they stopped it from doing. So it's hard not to see ill intent in this set of proposals. But so we have to work with foundations, So the other day, that example I mentioned about Afghanistan, that was a meeting that I and a couple others had with a foundation that's interested in funding those students, and so we have to try to create a scholarship fund so that we can have some number of scholarships. You know, if we could get up to the point of having 100 scholarships in rotation here, that would be significant. So all of those things deserve our consideration. And I understand the concern about commercializing education. That's not my wish either. And it's very, very hard when those of us who are here have good principled reasons for not wanting to pursue that, and the government says, that's what we want you to do. And if you don't, we're going to punish you economically, which is what they're doing. So.
Yeah. You said a little bit about looking towards NGOs for maybe those scholarships.
Yeah.
I also wanted to bring that up, as well as look at some of the student-led clubs here and what they've been doing. Do any of you have anything to say about that? About, you know, how you intend to help through the university and where you're reaching out to be able to get international students even with the fees being in place?
Yeah, so I could start.
Yeah, for sure.
For example, with SAI, we work to implement the Students at Risk program alongside the Norwegian Students' Union about 10 years ago. And it's been, so basically it involves students that have been persecuted for their activism and haven't been able to complete their studies because of that, have the ability to come to Norway to complete their education. And obviously they won't be directly affected by the tuition fees, but as Nadia mentioned, in terms of the number of English programs, that definitely will reduce the amount of different degrees that we can offer those students when kind of in that application process, because they're nominated by the different universities and then based on their academic profiles. So yeah, I think for like SAI, you know, basically advocating for that, definitely the Students at Risk program, but also kind of that going away from the principle of free education could quickly lead to, you know, further erosion of that principle, especially thinking about Norwegian students. Yeah.
On top of that, has there been any want to broaden the STAR program to try to get even more students? Or what's been the deal with that since the tuition fees?
Yeah, I think the main priority is, of course, to ensure that there are enough programs and degrees that people can apply to, and obviously it's now administered by the Foreign Ministry, so it's really up to them in terms of like how much funding is available. So of course we're always open for expanding it, and currently we're working on expanding into more countries, because we see that, you know, coming to Norway that has somewhat limited amount of English courses also offers some limitations there. So we're working with several countries in the EU to create a more like EU-wide program, and it has already been implemented some similar form of program in Germany and Poland. And I know there are discussions also with Finland and Denmark about similar programs, but especially having it on an EU level, especially considering countries like France and Spain in terms of more the international languages, also definitely offers more flexibility to those students that are in danger and not necessarily that proficient in English.
Yeah, definitely. Any of the other organizations? I mean, you're in Amnesty, yeah?
Yes, in Amnesty, but we haven't, unfortunately, we don't have any similar programs that happen to bring in, you know, international students. But I think I can say a little bit more from the student democracy point of view. because it's been a huge issue that we've been addressing, and especially with the Student Council at Lansam, which is the most international student council. All of our meetings are in English as well because it's such a mixed group. So it's definitely going to be felt throughout the whole council, the change. But I think it's important to emphasize that our current student democracy leaders, they've been working really hard on spreading awareness about this issue, and they really wish to continue. But the problem is now that elections are coming up, so the current leaders are going to be replaced. We're finding out who that's going to be this, or who the candidates are this week, and everyone is aware of what's happening now, but how is that going to look like in the future when there's not going to be more international students applying to be part of the student democracy? What's going to happen when that's going to be reduced down to primarily domestic Norwegian students? How is that going to look like, and who's going to be responsible for spreading that awareness on the level of the student democracy? Because of student democracy at NMBU has a lot of impact on the rest of the university, the different bodies, and we collaborate with them. And then there's, that fear that what if it happens that at some point there's not going to be that need or passion or drive to raise awareness of this issue? How is that going to look like? But I believe now with the collaboration, they work a lot with NSO, the National Student Organization as well. So there is a lot of awareness when it comes to the responsibles there about how important this is and how this is going to impact everyone. So Norwegian students, international students, just Norwegian society as a whole as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that's going to progress. But hopefully we will also get more insight on that in the next coming weeks with the elections and how that's going to look like.
And I think that's a great point to make, that especially student democracy and all these other clubs are going to be affected, and are we going to have that international body to show those types of campaigns that we're having now?
Exactly.
Will we have an international student union if we don't have enough international students?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Did you?
I would like all of us, the universities and the students, to have a sort of two-track approach, to both on the one hand keep fighting the tuition fees and to explore the alternative option. And I'm a little bit afraid, within our faculty, I'm the one who's kept voicing that fight this tuition fee, where we've had a tendency to say, okay, but we cannot, so we must look at the alternative options, the scholarships, the institutional collaboration, and that is important. But I would like to step just back a little. As I said, I came here, joined a NORAD-funded program, scholarships, good scholarships for students from the South. NORAD well-funded to run the program, travel, field research, everything was included very nicely, funded by NORAD. But that had some, strings attached in a way. It meant it was for NORAD countries, NORAD-defined countries. While I was a student here, Norway had a diplomatic fallout with Kenya. Suddenly, we were told that Kenyan students would be sent back. And so that was the struggle in 1991, fighting for Kenyan students to be allowed to stay and complete. But there were no new Kenyan students after that, right? Okay. So certain countries, often certain institutions, there are quite a lot of limitations, sometimes more costs, I think, and more bureaucracy attached. So I'm quite concerned that while we establish and have as many alternatives as we can, we also fight for the free, open access for anyone, which is fair, flexible, and available, to the student who happen to take an interest in our university and is willing to come to Norway, just across the board, and not depending on diplomatic relations and existing programs or not, which always come with a lot of political changes and constraints and so on.
I definitely agree, and that's an amazing point to make, because I think as students and professors in these positions, we tend to be a little bit pessimistic. But if you don't mind elaborating a bit, what are some ways then that you think personally we can fight against this?
No, that is difficult. I don't think it's writing in the media, which I've tried to do and I'm still trying to do, or even telling, participating in public consultation. It doesn't seem to have We don't have the ears at the moment. So I'm not sure. You asked about it. I think we must, I don't know, demonstrate. Maybe we must learn from young Samis who are against windmill construction in reindeer herding areas. Think about action. So at least I'm very happy. That's why I'm very happy that you're organizing this and inviting us. I'm very happy that you as students are on this ball, continue to be, and also appreciating that Kurt Rice has been, as representing NMBU. I think that is very important. But I don't have a magic trick, fortunately.
Can I say something? We had an idea, as I graduated soon before May, so we had an idea that I have graduated. What I could do is I could go to the Stortinget and have a banner like Greta Thunberg does on like a Friday strike. I could do it for the international students' tuition fees. But the problem is, I come from non-European background, so I'm not allowed to stay in Norway for long without having a job permit. So it's like they don't have any loopholes to cross and just be like demonstrating everywhere, every time in front of parliament or in front of the palace. So